going to be talking about how to cook like a master chef with a focus on plant-based food, and Aaron's going to keep it as whole foods as possible. So we're looking at how to make healthy and delicious plant-based food. So your host tonight, myself, my name's Hannah O'Malley. For those of you who don't know me, I work as a pharmacist at Nelson Hospital and also at Life Pharmacy Prices. And I also founded a platform called the Better Base. So this is a website and also a company that puts on events and shares resources, and we host webinars to help people to learn about the benefits of plant-based foods, and we focus on why it's good for our health and why it's good for our environment. So thank you all for joining us tonight. We're really excited to have our presenter being Aaron Brunet. And if you haven't heard of Aaron yet, definitely have to check out his website after tonight's webinar. He won MasterChef New Zealand, the TV series, in 2013, and he has done some pretty incredible things since then. So tonight he's going to be discussing how he approaches food for maximum enjoyment and satisfaction. He's going to be talking about the 10 essentials in his plant-based kitchen and what keeps him coming back for more. Over the last 4 years, he's been writing a plant-based food column in the New Zealand Herald Bite magazine, and he's really excited about the future of super healthy food. He has the belief that no one's going to ditch their meat and dairy and junk food just because somebody tells them to. So he really thinks that the alternative has to be tastier, healthier, and sexier. So we're super enthused and busting to be eating more of these delicious plant-based meals. This is part of one of our series of webinars that we're doing. We had Luke speaking in January, so Dr. Luke Wilson is a GP, and he talked about next level health and how we can be using plant-based foods to be feeling our best and reducing our risk of ongoing diseases. And then we had dietitian Emma Strutt speaking last month about how we can optimize our plant-based diet and make sure that we're getting everything that we need. So if you haven't checked out those webinars, you can go on to the betterbase.com website and view those. And tonight we've got Aaron, and then over the coming months we'll be looking at more about the environment and fitness and how plant-based food links in with those. So we've got Dr. Mike Joy, who's an academic, who'll be coming to speak to us. And then we've got Ben Eitelberg, who's an endurance athlete and coach. So what's in store tonight? Aaron will be delivering an amazing presentation on cooking like a master chef, and then we're going to be having a Q&A session. So during the presentation, feel free to be putting your questions in the box if there's anything that interests you or excites you or anything you'd like Aaron to talk more about, and I'll be noting down some of these questions, and then at the end we'll have time to go through these. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Aaron, and I'll be back at the Q&A session. So Aaron, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I'm really looking forward to seeing your presentation.
Cool, thank you, Hannah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And as Hannah said, tonight I'm going to be talking about these three things: enjoying food. What I want to talk about here really is how I approach food in a way that gets the maximum. And the essentials are kind of much more practical things. That's getting specific about what I actually do at home and just some really simple tips. And then what works is I want to talk about how I make being plant-based a lifestyle rather than just like a brief thing. So these are the things that I've found that keep me going in a plant-based lifestyle and keep enjoying it. So to start with, I thought I'd talk a little bit about what MasterChef was really like behind the scenes. Like, you might think about it as being all fancy techniques and fancy ingredients and stuff like that, but the real behind the scenes stuff has a lot of parallels to how I found it when I've chosen to be plant-based. Like, MasterChef was a really new situation, and a lot of it really came down to sort of dealing with that newness and managing the stress and the situation itself. So the things that made the massive difference to me were to remember the things that were really my favorites in life, like the foods and the dishes, the family meals and things like that, that were always really special to me. And then I found I brought a lot of curiosity and openness to the situation because that was like coping with a really new situation. Those were the things that were successful. And I definitely, you could see some contestants on the show who were kind of, they were sort of happy up to a point and then they suddenly sort of shut down. And I found keeping that real yes perspective going the whole time was like a really big thing. So I'm going to sort of show you as we go through how eating plant-based, parallels these same things. And definitely on the show, like a lot of what really went on the show was in the kitchen at the house, because we had to live away from home for 3 months. All of us were learning from each other, and we were literally creating this little bubble, like a little community of people in a new situation. And the thing that probably made the biggest difference to me on the show was to really look after myself in terms of like getting sleep and exercise and not drinking too much alcohol, not having too much coffee, all the same sort of things I do nowadays to try and make life work well. And so when I thought about these things, I thought, yeah, there's so much parallel between MasterChef and what it's been like since I chose to go plant-based. And I went plant-based about a year after the show. And it was really because my daughter was looking at the state of the world, and I was trying to figure out what I could do to make the biggest difference to show her that I was actually really interested in her life and her future too. So going plant-based for me, the environmental side of it was probably the first thing that really sort of kicked me off. Okay, so when I talk about enjoying food here, this might not be quite what you think, but I want to give you the real story rather than just the surface kind of layers. And to me, enjoying food is a lot more, there's a lot more to it than just ingredients and cooking techniques. It's also about creating a really beautiful relationship inside ourselves and with the world around. And this is something that when I really thought about, how I enjoy food, these are the true stories. And it reminded me, there's a famous New Zealand chef, Al Brown, who early on in the show, when I was kind of going to some events to try and prepare, he talked about how the context of when we eat and what the situation is one of the biggest things that makes a difference. Like the way he said it was, if you just had an argument with your partner and you're in a fluorescent lit, bland white room, you could be served the most amazing food and you really wouldn't get that much enjoyment out of it. Whereas you can be perhaps sitting on the beach at sunset with someone you love and eating the simplest thing and you actually get a huge amount of pleasure from it. So I think it's really great to bear that in mind. Like the fanciest food in the world isn't going to really make you happy if you're not well set up to enjoy it. And so for me, I really love to think about where food comes from. Like I love to think about the plants that create food. And this picture sums it up beautifully. This is looking at vegetables in their natural context, the soil. You're seeing what's inside. What I love to think about is when I go shopping or when I'm perhaps just, walking around, driving around, I love to pay attention to all the plants and think about those fruit trees that you notice in the park or like the garden at the back of someone's house. And looking at this big picture, where food comes from, how it's grown, that's the first thing to me that really connects me to the food I'm eating. And so whenever I buy a carrot or an apple or something like that, I'm really in the shop, I'm actually thinking about those things and building my relationship with food from that point. And I mean, look at this. This is glass gem corn. This is one of the most incredible vegetables you could ever imagine. This is the sort of thing, like even when I'm looking at like a feijoa or an orange or a banana or anything that I'm cooking, I love to really look at it and see the beauty in it. It's kind of like seeing a favorite friend or your partner. Like you can overlook these things, but when you do slow down and look at the details, there's so much to appreciate. And like a feijoa, when you cut it, I've got a slide coming up soon. Actually, I'll sort of show you how nice it is to start looking at those simple details of food. So what I'm trying to do here really is sort of introduce you to the bigger picture about food and give that context. This one here, like, when you see a recipe and it says a tomato, that doesn't really tell me much. It's like, as soon as I see a tomato written in the recipe, I want to know, but what type? Is it a big one, a little one? Was it ripe? Is it juicy? Is it fleshy? And if you look at the right there, there's all those different varieties. They each do a different thing. Like there's a beefsteak tomato at the back or the little cherry ones at the front, they all have really different characters to them. So I'm a massive fan of appreciating and thinking about each particular thing. Like a potato, there are different ones for baking and boiling, and they all do their own unique thing. And the more you get to know these things, the more I think you can fall in love with them and then start to appreciate them in the food you cook. Appetite to me is a huge thing. Like in terms of sheer enjoyment of food, you can have the most amazing food served to you, and if you're not really like ready for it, you just won't get that much out of it. I had this incredible experience when I was tramping one time. I had just like maybe I was 5 days in and I had moldy bread or something, but it tasted incredible because my appetite was all there and I was just so enthused. And it's like when sometimes I've done juice fasting, and after 3 or 4 days, I just start like picking things up and smelling them and loving them. And if you can bring that to any meal you make, I can guarantee you'll have a really much richer experience of the food. So it's kind of a precious commodity. Like I think appetite is something we overlook these days. There's so much food around. If we can give ourselves the option or the opportunity to be a little bit hungry, like maybe save up those little bits of hunger and desire for food that you get during the day, and then kind of let them blossom when you can really enjoy it. And I mean, I don't do that all the time, but I find it a really playful, fun thing to sort of not have immediate gratification, but then savor a richer experience of food later. And I think this is a really good thing to know when you're thinking about changing your diet and maybe thinking about eating healthier food. There's this thing called the pleasure trap, where if you look at this graph, in the middle is normal pleasure. And you can think of this graph as being the kind of how much pleasure you're getting. And it's kind of linked to dopamine. So when we eat something like a really rich, like a chocolate bar or like deep fried junk food kind of thing that's packed with salt and sugar and fat and all that stuff, it can give us quite a dopamine spike. And that's all very well, but we kind of get accustomed to that. And it kind of wears off. It's one of those things that, like initially we get this great buzz from those things and then it kind of becomes normal again. And that's the middle of the graph where it kind of becomes normal. The thing that happens is once we let go of some of those foods and we go back to eating simpler stuff, it can be a bit of the opposite. We can dip down and think we're not, experiencing pleasure in our life. And unfortunately, that can kind of have an effect when we start eating healthy food for a little while, like a week or so, and we don't feel that same buzz anymore. And we think it's because, the food's not great, but the thing to bear in mind is that as your body adjusts and you come back into harmony, then you get a lot more pleasure back out of a simple food again. So this to me is like a great thing when we are transitioning to something that's maybe like a whole food plant-based lifestyle. This is an important thing to not get stuck in that sort of dead zone where you think it's no good. Give it time and it will come right and you'll enjoy things a lot more, I reckon. That's certainly what happens for me. And this is about what I was saying before about appetite. One of my favorite concepts is to eat the simple food while your appetite is strong. So this is the kind of thing I would eat at the start of a meal. Like my favorite thing would be to maybe go for a walk with a podcast on my headphones, come back and have a salad like this when I'm really hungry and really enthused. And what happens then is I build this beautiful, a virtuous cycle. Like it's like a positive feedback loop when I'm getting to taste like that crunchy, fresh, healthy food when my appetite's strong. It's a lot more exciting. And if I can keep doing that every day, I build this really strong association that this food is delicious and that I'm not needing those things I perhaps used to eat to feel that same enjoyment. And this is a picture of one of my favorite breakfasts. And so this is actually like banana ice cream. You can see there's the creamy stuff is sort of frozen banana and fresh fruit blended up. But then I've made a bowl full of yummy things. I've got chopped fruit on top and lovely toppings. And the point about this is learning to find pleasure in things that initially you might see as just like, in quotes, super healthy. But when you start to play and find the things that you really love, um, you can get this, like to me, when I eat this, I'm just blown away. Like this is not any kind of second best. This is absolute buzz. And I look forward to it and my mouth waters and I'm drooling thinking of, this breakfast. So to me, it's learning to find the things for you that give you that pleasure in food that's, you know, plant-based and healthy as well. So I was talking about details before. This is a slice of feijoa that I just had the other day. It's feijoa season, yay! And how about when you slow down and look, and you can see all the details here, like there's this beautiful translucency, the beautiful change of textures. When you put this in your mouth, you get all these lovely different things going on. There's the chewy bit and the juicy bit and the tangy, and it's really nice to notice these things. Like give yourself time to slow down and actually appreciate these things. There's so much sophistication and richness in a feijoa. Um, and my experience has definitely been that when I do take that extra 5 or 10 seconds, put that in my mouth and just let it sort of let the taste build on my tongue. I did this with a friend the other day. We had a piece of feijoa in our mouth and just waited for 10 or 20 seconds. And it's like, oh my God, the flavor builds and suddenly there's this smell in your nose and it's an amazing experience. Whereas you could just kind of scoff a feijoa without paying attention. And this kind of applies to lots of things in life, I think, where when you do just take that moment and slow down and appreciate them, suddenly there's a lot more enjoyment to be had. So speaking of slowing down, this to me illustrates like if you're going to build a beautiful mandala picture like that from these beautiful petals and leaves, it's going to take time, right? The trouble is nowadays we're constantly told how busy we are. And you see it all the time. We lead such busy lives. Like there's all these stories being fed to us. And the reason is that we're told these things so we can be sold a solution. Like, here's your problem, buy this, and your problem's gone. The thing is, we can choose whether we believe this or not. And for me, I've made a strong choice to not believe that and to appreciate that there is time in the day. For instance, like on my phone, I could be spending 20 minutes just, browsing on the phone, whereas I could put that time to other use, and suddenly there's a lot more time in the day. And so I'm creating a new story about, you know, how life works and what's important. So that's a little overview to me. It's not recipes, it's not fancy techniques, but these are the things that I truly believe start to bring a lot more appreciation to the food we eat. And that's why I wanted to share them with you. Okay, so yeah, and it's like I see in the comments there about sitting around the table with a family and talking about food and appreciating like that that stuff. It's old-fashioned, but it really is great. It really does give you a chance to bring enjoyment to what you're eating rather than just kind of scoffing in front of a TV. Like when you actually look at what's in your plate, it's amazing if you even just take 10 seconds to stop and look. Wow, what's on the plate? The colors, the shapes, it's beautiful. I sometimes just stare at my food. I recommend that. Okay, so let's get really specific. So that was going in the big picture. We're going to zoom in for some close-up stuff. And what I want to share here is what I really do. Like this is what makes a difference to me on a day-to-day basis. Okay, this is not what you might think, but this is the truth. So when we're looking at plant-based food, plants come in all sorts of shape and textures, and it's fair to say that with some tools, we can expand the possibilities here hugely. So I'll give you some examples, but like for instance, if you have nuts, you can just eat a nut on its own, or you can blend it or grind it or do all sorts of things, extract the oil. There's all these different ways we can take simple stuff. And if you have a few of these helpful tools in your kitchen, it really can open the door to different experiences. So first one to me is a blender. And what I want to point out here is personally, like I've got the one on the left, the fancy one that I actually got secondhand. But all of these blenders will do an amazing job of changing changing the shape of things. And blenders are great for liquid or wet things. What some people I think don't realize is that there's blenders and food processors. And so what I want to point out is that a blender is for getting stuff really, really smooth, but it's not the one tool to do all jobs, okay? The NutriBullet on the right, I personally use that a lot of the time for making banana ice cream. It's fair to say if you do get the really fancy blenders, they can get things smoother faster, and that's a great thing. And they have a bigger capacity sometimes, so that's a great thing. But you can, and a NutriBullet will go a long way. In the middle, there's the Omni Blend too, which is it's like a more affordable Vitamix. Now, food processors, these are for dry things. So like I'm always making stuff like with nuts and dried fruit, blending them up like for bliss ball type things. And I've got the blender on the left, the $35 one off Trade Me, and it's fantastic. It works really well. I had a fancy blender like the one on the right, and to be honest, it was just so much fiddling I didn't use it. So I ended up selling it again and going back to the simple one. But these are great if you want to work with drier things that maybe don't go in a blender. This is the way to do it. But point here is you don't need to spend a lot of money. You can make it work really easy. This is a pet topic. I'm a grater geek, so this is a part of my grater collection. And this has a lot to do with changing the shape of food so that we get to experience it in different ways. And my favorite example of this is a carrot. So if you grate it on the orange grater there with the big holes, you get like standard kind of grated carrot, which is good. But it can be a bit dry. And so I use the one, that skinny stainless steel one in the middle, which has got much smaller holes, and that lets you grate the carrot in a much juicier form. So one of my favorite things is to have some carrot grated big and some carrot grated small and put them together, and then you get the best of both worlds. Same goes for beetroot or lots of different things. Like we sometimes get into a habit of just thinking there's one way to do things, but I would encourage you to explore different shapes. And the slicer is great too. Getting stuff really thin can bring out the juiciness. Now, sharp knife. Chefs will often say you have to get a really fancy knife, but a simple $7 knife like this can make a big difference. If it's sharp, it'll make it much easier to do things like peeling fruit, cutting tomatoes, slicing avocado. And with a blunt knife, you'd have to try a lot harder and it goes like off center. A sharp knife, even a simple cheap one like this, will go straight through and you get a nice clean surface at the end, which is, it's just makes life easier. I use mixing bowls like this all the time, every day, like for a breakfast, I'm often putting different things like grated apple and grated pear together with some perhaps, like this morning I had chopped apricots and walnuts and mixed them together in the bowl. So having bowls like this handy, the thing I was going to say about this that I think is really helpful is that it's nice to sometimes have like a salad where you've had two or three different little batches of things mixed together. You might have like, I'll show you a picture later on of like carrot and beetroot mixed together as one thing, and then like lettuce and cucumber and some dark greens mixed together in another bowl, and then you put those two results together in your serving bowl. And rather than just chucking everything together, having a couple of different mixing bowls like this, you get that chance to come up with different combos. So I find that super helpful. Now, pantry staples, these are things, this is literally a photo in my pantry. These are things I have handy, which are tasty and yummy, but took a little bit of time to prepare. But by doing them in advance and keeping them there, I can then make a really delicious meal, like a salad with some tamari seeds sprinkled on top and the cashew parmesan. So that picture on the left is the blender with cashews and savory yeast and garlic powder and pepper, which are ready to be blended up, and that makes a beautiful topping to go on like a soup or a salad. The point is having these things in the pantry, doing the work once in your food processor and then having them there, it makes your meals much more exciting in a really easy way afterwards. You can suddenly add layers on top of what you're doing, and that's a real key point to me in terms of making sort of plant-based food exciting, is having lots of different aspects going on. Beans are a pet topic, and I do believe, like beans to me are nature's miracle. The plant has been growing in the sun, the leaves have been photosynthesizing, and it's storing its energy in this little package. It's something that doesn't need refrigeration. It'll keep for years. It's like an absolute genius thing. And if you cook them yourself, you can get access to lots of different types of beans. So the point here to me is the slow cooker makes it super easy, and that's my technique. Soak overnight, turn them on in the morning, cook them all day, pop a bit of salt on at the end of the day, and then put the lid on, turn it off, let it soak all night, and they come out in the morning just amazing, like juicy and plump and delicious. And when you make a big batch too, you can have some in the fridge and freeze others for later. And then you've got a base to work from that you can do a lot of great dishes with later. Okay, smoothie base. This is what I would, well, I used to eat this every day and then I've kind of eased back a bit, but having bananas in the freezer makes any milkshake into like a thick shake or like, a smoothie. If you have the banana frozen, suddenly it tastes a lot more exciting. And this is the base combo that I use for any number of different smoothies. So banana, vanilla essence, and then miso, which people are normally surprised about, but that gives this like salty caramel, delicious character to it. And then something like tahini or almond butter, which are both basically whole foods. You just change the shape of the seed or the nut to make it smooth. And having a little bit of something with fat in it like that, when you're making a banana ice cream or a it gives it a creamier, thicker effect. You can use coconut cream too, but that doesn't count as whole food plant-based. But if you just think of that basic thing, you think of adding frozen passion fruit to that or frozen raspberries, you can go all these different ways. This is like your vanilla ice cream base. And believe me, when you make one like this, it'll taste fantastic and people will be saying like, wow, what did you do? Okay, frozen berries. Those cherries in the middle there, I would highly recommend going to Countdown and getting a bag of those as a beautiful dessert. All you need to do is thaw them slightly, maybe a touch of almond or vanilla essence on top, and they're delicious. You can put a little bit of something sweet too if you want to, like a bit of maple syrup maybe, but they're actually pretty sweet on their own. And I always have these in the freezer. You'll see that dessert on the right. That's actually like a banana-based ice cream, and it's a simple thing, but you can turn something really simple into a really, really beautiful dessert. And the miso, I see a question there. It's any miso will work, but I would go for, actually, I've got a picture coming up here. Miso, this is made in Nelson, and this is it's just a light color. Like you can get miso light colors through to darker colors. This one is Urban Hippie. You can buy it in kind of specialty shops. The thing I love about this is it's raw, so it hasn't been pasteurized, and therefore it's a probiotic. So you can put this into smoothies or that banana ice cream. I sometimes spread it on a wrap as kind of like think of like Marmite, but it's basically a flavor booster. So it's got the umami flavor, which adds and sort of boosts up all the other flavors. And I always have this in the pantry. I think it costs about $13 a bag, but it lasts me like 2 or 3 months, or at least 2 months. So, compared to a bottle of wine, it's a pretty good deal. And you can use any miso, but this one obviously has that advantage of being raw, which is a great bonus, I reckon. Now, the other thing I always try and do I was talking about beans before. I try and have some things like brown rice and beans and shredded cabbage and maybe grated carrot in the fridge ready to go, because this is giving you like a really great head start when you want to make a wholesome meal. You're partway there already. And like with that brown rice, one of my favorite things might be just to chuck that in the pan. And even in like a dry non-stick pan, you can crisp it up and crunch it up a bit with some good heat. Then if you add some stuff like chopped tomatoes and spinach or silver beet and fresh herbs, you've gone a long way to making a really tasty thing really easily. And because you didn't have to cook the rice beforehand, you've got that lovely kind of, you can make something amazing in 5 or 10 minutes. If you chuck some garlic on as well and maybe some fresh herbs on top, like fresh coriander, that suddenly makes a really simple meal really easy to get to. Same with the beans. Like I'll show you a picture coming up soon of my current absolute favorite thing. And having cooked beans in the freezer or the fridge, you can use tin beans too, but it is lovely to have your own ones. They do just come out better, I reckon. Sprouting is something I'm always doing. I've got sprouts on the bench at the moment, and the thing about this is it's so easy and so nice to have them fresh. You can chuck them in a smoothie, get a whole lot of nutrients as a massive boost, and it's super, super cheap too. Like you buy sprouts at the supermarket and they might be $3, $4, but honestly, a spoon of sprouts is only going to be cents, like 20 cents or something, and it'll make a jar full of amazing sprouts. So if you want to add lots of nutrition to your food, I would do that. The other thing I would say about eating ingredients is that knowing how good they are, to me, makes a massive impact on how much I enjoy them. Like they can taste quite grassy or green, but to me, when you've got that that understanding of all that vitality, suddenly I build this beautiful association with the flavor as well. And so I've kind of grown up with sprouts, but I've fallen more and more in love with them the more I get to know and understand them. Okay, this is a really key thing to me. When you're making plant-based food, like we can sometimes miss textures that we might have had when we're eating, you know, like sort of barbecued meat or things in the past. You get a lot of texture from meat, but have a look at these two potatoes. So the one on the left is boiled, and that's fine. It's nice and simple, but that potato on the right has been in the oven for 3 hours, and it's got this amazing, like crunchy, chewy skin, and suddenly you've got a whole variety of texture going on. You've also got the caramelization. Like I've actually got kumara in the oven tonight. My friend's visiting, and I bake that for 3 hours, and you get just the most incredible, like caramelly crunch. It sticks to your teeth in one end, and then this gooey, soft, beautiful, sweet middle, and skin that's chewy. So one of the big things I think is being willing to cook things a bit longer than you might think. Like, don't be scared of taking things a bit past where you're going. So someone's asking what temperature. I would do about like 180 degrees for 3 hours, maybe 170 if you've got a fan oven. Favorite sprout too, I see there. I do love mung beans, and but then there's all sorts of mixes too. Like mum often has fenugreek and lots of different things. Fenugreek is a good one to play with too, but I would experiment, see what you like. Yeah. Okay, citrus. This is something, particularly when you're doing whole food plant-based cooking, if you're trying to cut down on salt and extra flavorings, bear in mind that citrus really adds a lot of excitement to food. So they like lime, lemon, and orange, obviously the key ones we normally use, that they all have their own character. And whenever I make a salad that's got orange juice on it, my daughter always says, "Oh my God, how did you make this salad so good?" So my favorite thing would literally be just to get like fresh leaves in the bowl and sprinkle orange juice on. Perhaps use that as the base of the dressing, and then when I serve it, maybe sprinkle a bit of lime on top. And one of the things is you get these little bursts of flavor in different parts of the bowl. So that variety of tastes gives our taste buds something to really get excited about. The other thing is the zest of these oranges is packed full of essential oils, and there's a lot of aroma and flavor in those. So I would, like that rice dish I was talking about before, chuck some orange zest in, chuck some lemon zest in, see what happens. You get this extra richness from that part of the fruit. Now, veggie stock, this is something if you're trying to cut down on oil, you can use veggie stock like in a hot non-stick pan. That's a great way to kind of cook things without using oil, but with getting that moisture going on. And you can make your own veggie stock from throwing lots of things in the pot. If you want to, on occasion, perhaps be a little bit, like I was saying to Hannah, this is something that's getting away from whole food plant-based, but a stock powder like that one on the right, which is actually vegan, it says chicken, but the word style is underneath it. And that is something that you can just put a little spoon of that into things, and sometimes rather than making a whole veggie stock, that can give you like a really quick way to do it. This is a bonus point here. This is carrot and beetroot. See on the top of the salad here, we've got carrot and beetroot like I was talking about before. And I was talking about the different bowls too. So this is an example of not having everything mushed together. You can imagine if you put all these things into one, it's like mixing all your paint and you get this kind of disappointing brown at the end. If you can separate things out, so like you have the green layer and then the colorful layer and then maybe something else that's got cashew parmesan on top, but um, this is a great thing to me to just have that idea of like separating, like you've got the sweet flavors on top and then maybe the lemony dressing on the greens and get different things going on. So part of making food exciting, I think, is to give yourself that chance to, like when you're eating it, put your fork into different parts of the bowl and you get a different thing going on. That's a real a bonus. Well, that's one of those kind of techniques that separating flavors out, then you have a lot more fun, I think, as you're eating. Okay, cool. So these are tips now about what actually works for me. So when I was talking at the start about my approach on MasterChef, when we go into eating plant-based food, it is quite a different world, and to people that can be an unfamiliar situation. So these things about being curious and sort of being a yes, I'll sort of explore these a bit more, but I just want to point out that you really are going into a kind of a new territory. And the first thing I would say about that is if you're going into an unfamiliar place, is find something that's like an anchor point, like what's your new favorite going to be? So this is one of my new favorites. It is a wrap at the bottom, which I toast over a gas flame till it's really crunchy. And you can use those wraps at the supermarket if you want, like those Farrah's wraps. The spinach ones are ones I like. This is a wrap made with corn and actually with hemp protein. So it's got a bit of a green tinge. But if you get that, rather than just a plain soft raw wrap, get it crunchy, like toast it over the gas flame to get that real brown and it's actually crispy. Suddenly you've got this beautiful sort of caramelization again and crunch and stuff going on. This is just like a simple bean, like a refried bean mix, and then it's got fresh sweet corn, tomatoes, coriander. When you bite through it, you get all these different like textures and flavors, and it's kind of like a pizza, half raw, half cooked. And so that to me is a favorite thing. Like my mouth is watering right now. I can't wait to eat that next. And so what I encourage you to do as well is find those things that you honestly really, really are excited about, so that when you're leaving behind familiar things, you're getting new stuff that's going to attract you. And curiosity. So this is, a couple of years ago, jackfruit was something that was really new, and now you can go to a lot of cafes and see jackfruit on the menu. This is something I've just heard about recently, banana blossom. So on the left is the raw state, on the right is someone doing vegan fish and chips. So they've got a banana blossom, and this has actually been like battered and deep fried. So sorry, Hannah, but that's just a great example of like we're heading into new territory here, but it hasn't all been done before. So we can actually be really creative. And oh yeah, banana peel, people are saying. I have to try that too. People are using banana peel like the jackfruit. I haven't tried it yet, but I have seen it. One thing that I think is really cool, it's like we're sailing into a new land when we start eating this way, and it can be really creative. Like, sometimes if you think of a painting, there's that guy Mondrian who paints with a simple palette, but it actually, when you're not overwhelmed with choice, you can be more creative sometimes. And this is to me about being yes. This is something, I had a great example of this. This is a dish which has got walnuts. So that base layer that you see on the lettuce, it's got walnuts and tamari and chili and cumin seeds in the food processor to make like a walnut mince. And the point about being yes here is I gave this to someone at a place I worked whose son had no interest in being vegan, but he was willing to try something new, and he actually honestly thought it was like pork. But it's really great fun to experiment and to try these things and to let people inspire you about new foods. Because I think sometimes we leave behind the stuff that we're familiar with, and it can feel a bit of fear and loss. And I find if we can be playful and experiment, you know how toddlers say, no, I don't like it before they've even tried something? My personal thing is I'll try anything and give it a chance. And so I'd encourage you to do the same. Self-care. So this is my favorite, breakfast again. And this is what I want to talk about here briefly is just when I want to be good to myself, for one thing, it really helps to have delicious stuff like this that you look forward to. But it's also, I know that when I make the time to be nice to myself and to actually be kind to myself, that's when I tend to choose food that I know is going to be really good for me as well. And it's a choice, like it's a choice to literally on my next slide here, the choice to be kind to yourself makes a massive difference. It's you can actually choose it, and you can even try this right now. I went to a workshop about 2 weeks ago where we just put our hand on our collarbone, like in our shoulder, and just have that feeling of there's this person caring for you and loving you and supporting you. This person with their hand on you can be your best friend, and that can be you. And so when I'm kind to myself, I do choose food that's good for me. And taking a step back and actually choosing to be kind to yourself, I think, is a really great step. Um, the other thing I'd say is learning from others. Like this guy, Rich Roll, with his podcast, he talks to doctors and researchers and sports people. Um, he talked to the guy who created Twitter the other day. But this thing of listening to other people who have a lot to share, like you can learn a lot about things like gut health and sort of the stuff that hasn't made it into the newspapers yet, and it's like leading the pack. I'd really encourage you, if you're eating a new way, to surround yourself with great information and people like this who are sharing, people who have beautiful things to say that really inspire you. Like when I feel inspired from listening to a podcast, it really changes my choice about what I want to eat. And community, so that's one form of community. I'd also suggest, like for me, I've been going to vegan potlucks and finding like-minded friends, like a new tribe of people. It's really great. Like online is one thing, but it's really great to go in person. And if you can find people in your community, like what Hannah's doing with the Better Base, finding that community makes a real difference to feeling like you're not alone, and to also just like the vegan potlucks I go to, there might be 50 different dishes on table, and I'm always going and just snooping and trying stuff, and you pick up ideas and you can talk to the people who made it and ask them, what did you do? How did you do that? It's really fun, and it's good to feel like you're just around people who share your interests as well. It's like you're not crazy, you're actually doing something that a lot of other people can see the sense into. Okay, now the other one, being present in terms of making these choices work in your life. This is what I do all the time now. What I used to notice is I'd have some challenge in my day, and without even realizing how I got there, I'd just be like standing in front of the fridge or the pantry looking for a solution to comfort and soothe me. And these are the questions I ask myself, like, what do I really need? Like, am I hungry, or am I just feeling something too much? Like feeling something I don't want to feel? Or am I thirsty? And how will I feel after I eat this? So this is about um, becoming your own observer. And to me, it's like, what would a caring friend suggest in this situation? If you're your own friend, like, what would you suggest to yourself when you're able to take a step back and notice what's going on? Um, and in terms of being present, like, which I think this picture shows well, not being in the past or the future, but being right here, right now. I find life is way more enjoyable when I can actually choose to take pleasure in the moment with whatever's in front of me, like whatever's on my plate. Choose, find a fun way to eat it, and be right here, right now, enjoying it. And meditation helps with this a lot too. And I've I've been meditating for a while now, and that just brings me right back to the present moment, which to me, this is something that's helped me to keep my choice of how I eat alive in my life. The other thing I'd say is those apples on the left, for instance, came from a tree in a local park. You know, when you eat a beautiful fruit and it really makes an impact on you, like pay attention and look, how does the skin look? Like, what's different about this fruit compared to the one that didn't taste great? And like with nectarines, I've noticed over the years that the ones that are cracked and look a bit gnarly, those are the sweet and really flavoursome ones. So when you get something great, pay attention to the details and build up your own internal database of what makes an ingredient fantastic, like those tomatoes I talked about earlier, or even carrots. There are times of year when they're better than other times of year. So it really is great to build up that skill. And with spices too, I would say I treat them like friends. So what I actually did with spices over the years is I gradually got to know each one at a time. Like I spent um, some time just getting to know cumin, using it in different things and grinding it or having it whole or using it in different dishes. And it can be overwhelming with lots of different spices, but if you take them one at a time, it's like you don't necessarily try and get to know 20 people all at once. Get to know one person, get to know one spice, and make them familiar to you so that you can find ways to use them in your life. Okay, and I guess to me, this is probably not news to a lot of people, but having a good why in terms of enjoying food and choosing to eat stuff that's good for you, having a really clear understanding of your why, I think, is a great help. So for me, like my family and environment were the things that were the biggest initial motivators to me. Um, and now that I've been eating this way for 4 years, I guess all those things play into it. Like I'm more interested in animal welfare, and my health has improved. And so, um, and I was listening to a great podcast the other day where the question was posed at the end, like, if you want to do these things that are good for you and good for your family and stuff, like, why do you actually want to be here longer? Um, and thinking about that, like, what's your purpose in life? Why do you want to be good to yourself? Why would you want to eat delicious, healthy, plant-based food? Like, what's really motivating you? And I know, just taking it on a different angle, it really made a big impact on me when I was talking with someone who told me that their father had died at 51 or something of a heart attack. And when you think about the impact on us of our health, like that's a huge why that keeps me inspired about eating beautiful food that's good for me. Yeah. And so joining the dots now, I guess what at the start I was saying about sharing what's really important to me. And what I've realized is that food is one part of the picture. And to make life work really well, what I've started to realize that it's all the different things like community and exercise and movement and food all fit together. And um, to me, joining the dots is where all these things kind of fit together. Like if I get obsessed about food on its own, it doesn't really work. It's when I do all the other things like that exercise that gives me the appetite to then enjoy the healthy stuff. That's what I'd say is my kind of my takeaway that I'd love you to remember from this is that don't just obsess about the food. It's like see how all these things fit together into a life that is rich and enjoyable. And that's what I'm really all about now, is not just like I was trying to figure out after MasterChef why I didn't want to just jump into working with food. And the reason is because it didn't feel complete. It was only part of the picture. And it's as I'm starting to learn about like enjoyment and living life richly and that's what I want to do now is help other people do that too. And that's what makes it all work together. So I better stop talking and answer some questions. So Hannah, are you still there? So thank you everyone. Thanks for listening to all that. It wasn't how to do fancy dishes, but what I'm trying to show you is the real story, the real stuff that makes food delicious and enjoyable. Yay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aaron. I was just nodding my head all the way through, and I think
Oh, good.
there are just not many chefs out there, if any, who could take food to, that deep level that you just have shared with
Thank
us.
you.
And I
Great.
think, we kind of probably a lot of us came on here to learn about, how of how we can make plant-based food taste delicious. And I think you did
Yeah.
that really nicely, but you also talked to us about the why and the where we're eating the food and, what spaces we're eating it in and who we're surrounding ourselves with. And I think
Great.
that whole context is just so important. And yeah, I
Great.
feel
Oh,
very
yeah.
blessed to have listened to that. And I think the comments coming through, everyone else has really enjoyed it.
Cool.
And I also
Awesome.
really enjoyed how you talked about building community. And I just want again thank the audience. When I first started eating plant-based food, I was living on the other side of the world, and I didn't know anybody who was eating plant-based, who was in the same city as me. So, yeah, really excited to be sharing this with everyone, and very excited to be seeing everyone talking about how they can meet up at the potlucks, which is great. And we're going to get one
Awesome.
started
Cool.
in Nelson for those people who. I've
Cool.
noted down a few questions, but
Yep.
drop a few in the comment box if you've got any more. So we had one from Anya around how to get skeptical plant-based eaters on board. So do you have any particular tips for people who are really skeptical about eating this way or don't want to
Yeah, I think the way to
plant-based?
people's hearts is through their stomach, and it's like you really do. It's like I was saying about choosing new favorites for yourself. It's like people, like the theories and the why and all that kind of stuff, that's our personal experience. But I think it's true when it comes to people who are not converts, it's like you want to give them something delicious. And so I guess if you can have a favorite that you love and really enthuse to someone and genuinely like, share what is it about this thing that you really, really, really get excited about. And to me, it's all those things like that crunch and texture and variety and different flavors. It's like, um, yeah, I would like give them your A game, so give them the best thing you can think of.
Yeah,
Um,
nice.
Practice at home, make something that you think is spectacular, and then serve them that, and then, casually mention, oh, by the way, this is plant-based. And that's a great thing, I reckon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice. I like that. We had a question from Alyssa and her partner about trying to cook both plant-based and zero waste. Do you
Yeah.
have any tips for people who want to try and minimize the environmental impact of
Yeah,
cooking?
actually, I was going to put a slide in about my pantry. I've got a lot of glass jars, and that so ideally, if you can find a place like Binin or some of the sort of the bulk places, you can actually sometimes take your jars and they will weigh the jar and then fill it up. And so if you want to be zero waste, that's one of the biggest things I'd say. And it's great too. Like if you have that zero waste philosophy, you're naturally not going to be buying all that packaged like over processed food. So it's a total win-win. And that's why having some of these tools I was talking about, like the food processor and the blender and stuff like that, when you're working with those whole foods and that zero waste approach, you can then it's like you can buy some sesame seeds and you can turn them into tahini yourself, or then you don't have to buy a jar of tahini, So the more you can do
Mm,
yourself and the more you can enjoy and have fun doing that, then I think the more you can make that work in your life. And my daughter's been a great inspiration because she's like a very, like very, very strong-minded about waste. She's done things like she will take a bag to a farmer's market and talk to someone who's got blueberries and say, next week, can you bring some that you can put in my bag rather than having them in that plastic container? So,
mm,
if you're keen, there are ways to do it. And partly it's about setting it up so you have those bags. Like I sometimes take my old paper bags back to the supermarket and fill them up again. And I'll have pumpkin seeds written on that paper bag and I'll take it back to the supermarket and fill it up again. So it just takes a bit of like creativity and playfulness, but I definitely think you can do it. The world is getting more friendly towards that too. So the more we can, like I make a point as well at the supermarket of asking the checkout people get the mushroom bags. I often put stuff in the mushroom bags and I say, how often do you see stuff in the mushroom bag that isn't mushrooms? Just to get them thinking and talking to their bosses about, like the fact that people want paper bags to put things in, not plastic ones. Yeah.
yeah, awesome. I think the place that you shop at is key. So, you
Mm.
mentioned some of the refilleries, going to the market, automatically there's going to be a lot less plastic.
Yep.
And then trying to buy the things, just being conscious of it and then thinking, maybe I'll cook with cabbage instead of broccoli because that's the one that doesn't have the plastic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
also,
And making it
also the,
fun too, like if you kind of set yourself a challenge, like today, like I was setting myself a challenge for a while that if I'd forgotten my reusable bag, I had to carry everything in my arms, and so I could only buy what I could carry. And I got really good at sort of stacking stuff up high, but like make it a game, makes it more
yeah,
fun. Yeah.
yeah. And also supporting some of the producers that are trying to change their packaging, like Ceres Organics now have their quinoa in a home compostable bag. So while
Mm.
it's better to go to the refillery and refill your glass jars, if you do happen to end up in the supermarket and want something like that, then trying to choose the one that is aiming to be more eco-friendly than
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah.
cool. All right.
Cool. And
We
I,
had
oh
sorry.
no, it's fine.
um, we had a couple of questions around the cashew parmesan.
Yep.
Um, freeze it. There was somebody, I think it was Ren, who said nuts might go rancid. Or how long will they be all right once they're blended up? Can you freeze it?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think you can generally taste when things go rancid, and I guess with cashew parmesan, it doesn't stick around for 6 months in the pantry to me. Like I probably use it all within a couple of weeks, and seems to be perfectly fine. I guess in the fridge would probably work even better. Um, but it's kind of just that, yeah, I suppose there is more air contacting the surface, but I think it's only if you left it a long time that you'd have to worry.
Yeah, great. There was also somebody Lizzie, who is, I should avoid nuts, having a heart condition, no more cashew parmesan. Should this also include seeds such as pumpkin and sunflower?
I guess
Um,
it's fair to say, yeah, some things have a much higher fat content than others, and there will definitely be some of those seeds with a much lower fat content. But I guess you probably want to, like talk with whatever health specialist about what's the right amount for you. But you can probably have more of things if they have less fat in them, Whereas something like a macadamia, that's going to be the last choice probably. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. I'd
It's really
I'd
great reading
agree with
labels.
that.
Like you can read all the labels in the supermarket too, and get to know the fat content of all the different nuts that way. That's a great trick. Like to sort of keep building up that knowledge
Yeah,
as you go.
right. And there's a Facebook group called Whole Food Plant-Based Kiwis, which you might want to join if you've got some questions like this. But I think around health, if you've got a particular condition, definitely get your advice from a specialist, your GP. And if
Yep.
your GP isn't really aware of the whole food plant-based approach, then people like Dr. Luke Wilson do consultations as well. So it might be worth
What I was
having.
going to say on that too, I heard a really great thing on a podcast. If your doctor isn't super on board, you can
Mm.
sometimes just like say to your doctor, like, I'll try this for a bit and then come back and then let them see the result, and then they start to get curious too. It's like
Yeah,
if you can do so, it was Dr. Dean Ornish was talking about this on the Ritual podcast the other day, and he was saying, so go back and you can suddenly be the person who your doctor is getting curious about.
yeah,
Mm,
awesome. And I know we do have at least one doctor in the audience here, so it's cool to see
cool.
more and more people getting on board with this. Um, so we had one from Lizzie around how long does brown rice last in the fridge?
Ah, that's funny. Someone asked me this at a cooking workshop I did last weekend, and the answer to me is like a long time, but I've never had any problem, put it that way. I've had brown rice in the fridge for up to a week, but I know people seem to have a fear around rice, and I don't know exactly how much of that is, accurate or fair, but from my personal experience, I've had brown rice in the fridge for quite a few days. And then the thing is, if you're frying it up and you're cooking it up really hot, like in a hot pan, getting it really, really boiling, I wouldn't maybe just get it lukewarm and then eat it. But if you're getting things nice and hot, to me, that's going to make a big difference.
Yeah,
I've never had any trouble, put it that way. So, yeah.
yeah, great. The beetroot and carrot tips are really delicious looking, and Sandra's
Cool.
been asking about the beetroot. So is that
Yep.
grated beetroot raw?
Yes, raw, definitely. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's really sweet. And the thing is, using a fine grater, it's actually it's not tough at all. It's really juicy and sweet, and it's a way to get like a beautiful raw vegetable full of phytonutrients into your diet in a way that's really enjoyable.
Mm,
And we used to make carrot salad for our daughter all the time when she was 3, and it was just like grated nice and fine so it's juicy, and with a bit of cider vinegar and stuff on top, and maybe a sprinkle of savory yeast, and changing the shape of things like that really makes them taste a lot better. So play with that, and I think you'll find stuff that you might not expect actually tastes really good.
yum. Can you say a little bit more about the savory yeast if people haven't tried that before?
Yeah, so savory yeast is, it's fair to say it's, let's see, it's got a lot of flavor like cheese. So it's got a great character. If you put it in a sauce, like you can make a white sauce and put savory yeast in it, and it has a much more cheesy taste. It's made from yeast that's been dried and salted and sort of in flakes, but it's quite rich in B vitamins. And in the plant-based world, people definitely sort of lean on that whenever you want that cheesy kind of taste. And it's I suppose I grew up having it on salads and on soups and that kind of stuff too. But in the cashew parmesan, for instance, it just adds that extra like nutty depth,
Mm,
which sort of takes it to a new place, gives it much more of that cheesy character.
yum.
Um, you,
Nooch.
you,
Yeah, nooch is the other name for it.
Oh, nooch. Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Carolyn's
And
just put that in the chat.
the thing I'd say is you can sometimes find it in small bags for a really high price or in bulk for about a quarter of the price. So it really pays to shop around. Don't get put off if it's $15 for a tiny bag. Go somewhere else. You'll find it for a much better price.
Awesome.
Yep.
Kim had a question around the sprouts.
Yep.
So are broccoli sprouts meant to be bitter, or is she doing something wrong?
I don't know. I haven't made broccoli sprouts.
Anyone else
Maybe
out
they
there
are.
into
What I'd say
broccoli?
about bitter though, bitter is a flavor that we shy away from, whereas Italians love bitter. So like radicchio, and there are like endive, and there are all sorts of things that are bitter that if you introduce them into your food gradually, they've got a lot of great nutrition in them, and they're really good for your liver as well. And so bitterness isn't necessarily something to run from. You know, it can be learned. It's a learned pleasure to me.
Mm, mm. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I really like how, you talked about this being such an adventure. And when people start eating plant-based foods, often they think about what they can't eat. But,
Yeah.
a lot of what you're talking about is just being creative and looking at a whole lot of new tastes and foods and flavors that we can experiment
Yeah,
with.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's amazing actually, like if you think about what's plant-based and what isn't, most of the food we eat is actually from plants. So
Mm,
there's not really that much of the food we eat that comes from animals, but it's just kind of a bit of a mental block we sometimes have. So if you look
mm,
around at the food that's in your pantry and in the shops, like I'd say by far the majority of it does come from plants, but obviously a lot of it is highly processed. And so my kind of enjoyment is to discover different beans and different things, like exploring new plants and finding how to bring them into my diet and having fun with them. There's a lot there to play with.
yeah. And for people who are maybe looking for recipes, what would be your
Yeah.
recommended resources for?
Yeah, what I tend to do is jump on blogs. Like I often get an idea and I'll sort of Google something and then I'll look at three or four different recipes, and over time you can kind of get a feel for, like you can see sometimes people will have a very basic version of something, and other people will talk in the notes about why they chose this and why they've um, done things a certain way. You can kind of over time get a bit of a sense of when someone has actually put more care and love into a recipe. So there's so much out there online, like, and I think a lot of it comes down to our own individual taste too. And as much, yeah, like I have to say with recipes, to me, like any recipe at best is a kind of an approximation of reality. It's
Mm,
not the full story, because like I said, when they say a tomato and a carrot, you suddenly there's a lot of variation that can go on from there. So whatever any recipe is, it always comes down to me to tasting and getting to know what you like as well, and being willing if the recipe doesn't seem to be quite right. Like use your intuition and do something that you think will probably make it better. And you might make a mistake or it might go wrong sometimes, but if you're willing to try and play, that's when you'll find the things that do work, and that's when they become the new favorites.
mm, yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah.
Final question. Do you have any tips for oil-free salad dressing? Is
Yes,
one a lot of
absolutely.
people
So
struggle with.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So what I'd say first of all, that one is orange juice is an absolute legend. Like a fresh orange cut in half and squeezed onto your salad. That's really, really good. Um, Oil free. I mean, I like a bit of mustard sometimes too in a dressing. That can be a good thing. Um, you can also, if you have a blender or a NutriBullet, you can sometimes chuck things in, like perhaps even if it's just a few seeds and it's still a whole food, and you're getting just a tiny bit of oil, but you're not pouring a whole lot of olive oil on your salad, or like, just like refined oil. So it doesn't take much of something like even just a couple of cashews or something that's a whole food, but you're getting all the other goodies as well and making a dressing that's got some creaminess to it. But if you want to keep it really simple, then citrus is pretty hard to beat. And what else? I do love a little bit of tamari or something too, which once again is salted. But if you just have a few, like a some teaspoon of tamari in a dressing with some citrus, it'll taste amazing. And maybe fresh ginger, fresh ginger and garlic
Mm,
and tamari and orange juice. I mean, that'll taste incredible.
yeah, delicious. And Shane's just saying Forks Over Knives has got a 5-minute balsamic dressing, which is yummy.
Oh, cool.
And
Yeah,
I
awesome.
quite like
Sounds good.
balsamic vinegar as a nice, quick, easy one.
Yeah,
The,
well, it's really great. You know, one thing I'd say too with vinegars, there's a lot of different types, and it can be worth, even if like, I dare you guys, if you're going to sort of buy a bottle of wine sometime that costs $20, go and spend $20 on a bottle of vinegar instead and see what happens. Like you will get the most amazing vinegar, and it'll last you for 3 months, not one night or 2 nights. And you know, if you have a variety of different vinegars and you're making a dressing, something you can choose that vinegar, or like there's a muscatel vinegar or a dark red vinegar. You know, there's a lot more to vinegar than just white vinegar and balsamic. There's a lot, and have fun with those. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Great. Well, thank you so much for answering all
Awesome.
of our questions. And if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to pop them on down and we'll try and answer them later on the Better Base Facebook page.
Yeah.
If anyone here would like to share another amazing culinary experience with Aaron, I'm really excited to share that he is running a retreat in Peru this year, which is an opportunity to spend a whole week exploring what makes life magical. So if you're adventurous and keen to explore food in this deep way and would like to experiment with plant medicine and yoga safely in a beautiful location, then this is a retreat that you might enjoy. So check out Aaron's website. And Aaron, do you want to just remind us on what your web address is?
Yeah, sure. It's my first name dot last name. So Aaron dot Brunet, AARON dot BRUNET at sorry dot co dot nz. And yeah, Peru. When I was talking about joining the dots at the end of the talk, this is like the high point to me of joining the dots with all the things I love in life. So Peru's an incredible place. I was there last year. I had the most incredible experience. The ingredients are amazing. The people over there are really connected to the food and the land. And so when you're eating, like when you're buying food in the markets and cooking it and eating it, you've got this incredible richness going on. And I did some amazing work with plant medicine, which was deeply healing, like one of the most special things I've ever done in my life. And in Peru, there's people who've been working with it for a long time, and it's a really, it's a beautiful, to me, like I'm learning from the plants about how to live a life where plants are supporting me. So plant medicine, which is a bit of an out there thing, but it's literally like certain plants helping you love the other plants more, and it's a beautiful thing. So I'm really
Awesome.
excited to be sharing that with people, and um, yeah, to be able to invite people to experience what I experienced is a real pleasure for me. Cool. Thank you, Hannah.
I'm sure it'll be an amazing week.
Yeah.
Um, if anyone here would also like to do us a favor in terms of getting more getting more people onto future webinars and sharing this information, then if you're able to type a little description of how you found this session, then that's something that we can use to, invite others to listen to our future speakers. And that would be really appreciated. So we'll send out some more information about the retreat in coming days. We'll send out the recording as well if you'd like to share it with any of your friends or colleagues or family, or post it online. That would be really appreciated. And if you are interested in the recipe planner that we've got on the Better Base, there's a 12-week um, meal program. It's called Ridiculously Good Recipes. So we'll send out a code to get a discount on there as well. So I hope that you took something useful away from this. And I think if you're, anything like me, you'll be coming away with just so many ideas of what you're going to be cooking up over coming weeks and months. Um, and yeah, we really hope that you can share this with your loved ones around you, see food in this deeper way, and be thinking about, choosing foods that not only taste good but also love us back and love the planet as well. You got any
Yeah,
final
totally.
final words of wisdom, Aaron?
Oh, I totally echo that. Like loving food that loves you back. I think that sums it up really well. It's and it's a beautiful thing when you do, like when your taste buds change and you do get into this space of really enjoying this stuff. Like life feels great, and it's a beautiful thing to get to that point where you're getting such enjoyment out of eating stuff that is really good. So it's totally doable, and it's a really, really nice thing. So I totally encourage people to, keep playing and exploring and having fun with that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Awesome. All right. Well, we will leave it there. And thank you for logging on, sticking with us. And yeah, we wish you well in your plant-based culinary